Good evening, and welcome to the 11 a.m. news. This is Chronology 2, Electric Boogaloo. I'm Chase Hendrickson.
I'm Hannah Lounsbury.
And I'm Josie McLean.
According to the first book of Joshua, Joshua has taken over as leader of the Israelites following the death of Moses. The Lord, in verse 5 of chapter 1, said, "Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you." The Lord has also told Joshua that the people must follow the law, be strong and courageous, and they will inherit the land. In response, the people have sworn their fealty to the new leader and promised to obey him as they did Moses.
Yes, I'm just getting word that the spies that we sent into Jericho have been kept by one Rahab. She seemed to have kept them safe inside her home, away from citizens who tried to take them. And as such, her and her family will be kept safe when we take over Jericho.
In 1406 BC, we see here that the Jordan divides and the priests move the ark across the Jordan because God divided the waters for them.
The people of Canaan are officially terrified of the Lord's people with the knowledge that he has dried the very waters of the Jordan in order to let them cross. In related news, Joshua has ordered the circumcision of all males within his party according to Joshua 5:1-8. While all those who left Egypt at the beginning of the Exodus were circumcised according to the Lord's commands, the new generation had not been circumcised during the 40-year period. The Israelite men will remain at the camp until their wounds have healed.
We are being told that Joshua did in fact fit the battle of Jericho. After 6 days of marching around the city, today they marched around it 7 times and then blew their trumpets and made quite a sound. And the walls came down, and they went to slaughter everyone, except, of course, Rahab and her family.
We have some more breaking news tonight. In 1406, Achan was caught trespassing and stole silver and other precious metal. He later admits to Joshua, after Joshua sent hundreds of men to see what happened at Ai, Achan was stoned and burned to death because of the sin he had committed.
After a series of successful battles and conquests in Joshua 8-13, the land is to be split between the tribes of Israel, as can be seen on this map. The splitting of the land can be seen all the way until chapter 21. Caleb, in reward for his loyalty, was given Hebron in chapter 14, verse 6-15. It may be noted that the Levites will receive no land directly from this deal, as the Lord was to be the inheritance of the priesthood. The other tribes have, however, agreed to give pasture and cities to the Levites out of their inheritance.
Breaking news! Joshua dies at the age of 110.
Ehud, the son of Jerah, a Benjamite who's interestingly enough left-handed, Ehud sent a gift to the king of Moab, and it was a dagger with 2 edges. The king was a fat king, and his name was Eglon. Ehud then kills the king with the dagger, and after he kills the king, he then rules the Moabites.
Ehud represents just one of many judges throughout the book of Judges, as can be seen here. These judges are all part of a larger cycle of sin within the book. As is shown in this chart provided by Dr. Alan Bandy of Oklahoma Baptist University, the people disobey the Lord's commands, and the anger of the Lord allows them to be overtaken by foreign invaders. The Israelites cry out to the Lord in their oppression, and in his love and faithfulness, the Lord raises up a judge to deliver them. Following deliverance, the people will live in peace until the death of the judge leaves them in a position to rebel once again.
Sorry, I was a little cold. Shamgar is Israel's 3rd judge and killed 600 invaders with an ox goad.
Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, is the only female judge in the book of Judges, so we praise her immensely.
Though Gideon may be the brave leader who helped us defeat the Midianites, he hasn't always had an easy road. When the Lord first called Gideon to save Israel from Midian, he tested the Lord and asked for signs. After Gideon had raised an army in Judges 7, the Lord told him he had too many soldiers, cutting his army from 32,000 to 300. Those 300 men went on to defeat the Midianites with lamps, pitchers, and trumpets, which sent the enemy into confusion and terror.
Hannah, the wife of Elkanah, was barren, so Elkanah had boys with his other wife, Peninnah. After waiting for quite some time, Hannah was given a baby boy named Samuel, who was dedicated to the temple.
Well, we come to Samson, Israel's last judge, who did once slay a lion with his bare hand and killed an entire Philistine army with only a donkey's jawbone. He had such long hair, but as you know, he became betrayed by Delilah last week. and was captured and kidnapped. But, thankfully, as he was chained to those pillars, he regained his strength and pushed the pillars over, killing himself and the Philistines in the process.
1 Samuel 2:12 has revealed that the sons of Eli are, quote, worthless men, unquote. The sons have been accused of treating offerings for the Lord with contempt and taking more than the priest's rightful share of meat brought by offerers. They've also been known to lay with women serving at the tent of meeting. While Eli has rebuked his sons, the Lord still plans on rejecting his house for their sins. The Lord has confirmed what he told Eli through a vision to Samuel.
This just in, the ark has been stolen by the Philistines. Sadly, the news reached Eli, causing him to fall out of his chair and break his neck, slowly killing him, though quickly killing him, now that I think about it. But we are getting word that God's wrath has already incurred upon the Philistines, causing them to get tumors, hemorrhoids, and the statue of Dagon has fallen prostrate before the Ark of the Covenant. They tried to put it back up again, but we find that it fell down again, with now its head and hands broken off.
In the wake of the stealing and recovery of the ark, the Lord's people have asked for a king, as seen in 1 Samuel chapter 8. While Samuel has warned them of the risks involved in being ruled by an earthly king in place of a heavenly one, the people have refused to obey. The Lord has told Samuel to obey their wishes and appoint a king.
This just in, God has reportedly rejected Saul as king, taking his spirit from him, and thus he sent Nathan out to anoint a new king. We see this new king has been called David, son of Jesse. Apparently, he was not there for the roll call. He was out with his sheep.
In 1024 BC, the story of David and Goliath took place. David was a very small man, and Goliath was a large man, over 9 feet tall. The entire army was scared of Goliath, and David, out of nowhere, appears and hears of this Goliath and decides to fight him and wins.
Slaying Goliath brought David more than just glory. 1 Samuel 18 has revealed that David has made a lifelong friendship with Saul's son, Jonathan, even saying that Jonathan, quote, loved him as his own soul, unquote.
In case you didn't know, Saul really hates David and has been trying to kill him for the past 3 weeks. But in this newest attempt, Michal, his daughter and David's wife, found out about the plan. And so she told David to get out of town. Meanwhile, she placed a stone statue in his bed, and boy was their surprise when those guards came to get David. It was a stone statue.
This just in, Jonathan has officially seen the truth of his father's feelings toward David and assisted him in his search for safety. The king even hurled a spear at his son in anger when asked about David in 1 Samuel 20:33. Jonathan then sent signal to David by shooting an arrow into a field where David was hiding and using specific code phrases to guide his servant to the arrow. The friends then wept together and parted so that David could escape Saul's wrath.
I'm not as cold anymore. David reportedly was very close to killing Saul. He was hiding in a cave when Saul entered that same cave to take care of some business. He snuck up behind Saul and cut a piece of his cloak off, to which David became very guilty and felt bad. He felt that he should not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed, and thus told Saul what might have happened.
Some more breaking news is just in. In 1 Samuel 25, we see where Samuel has died and is supposed to be buried at his home in Ramah.
Wedding bells are ringing, and David has taken a new wife. Abigail, previously the wife of Nabal, proved herself to David in 1 Samuel 25. While David's men took care of Nabal's shepherds, Nabal offered the men no hospitality in return. Abigail rushed to David with food and wine to beg her forgiveness when she heard, leading David to spare the lives of Nabal and his men. The Lord struck down Nabal 10 days after Abigail's return home, giving David the opportunity to take her as his wife.
Surprise, surprise, David has yet another chance to kill Saul, but yet again, he does not. because he is the Lord's anointed.
While Saul is in battle, Saul tries to have a soldier kill him, but the soldier does not do it, so he takes matters into his own hand and falls on his own sword and kills himself. Later on in battle, his 3 sons were killed. While many would be enthralled that David's enemy is dead, he is very remorseful, and he had the man who killed Saul executed. In 1100 BC, David brings 30,000 young men together, and they traveled to Bala to get the ark and bring it home to Zion.
As king, David starts to feel that the Ark of the Covenant should have quite a nice home, considering David himself has a nice home. And so he wants to build a temple. But Nathan tells him that God says he doesn't need a temple, but that his son instead will build the temple for God.
It appears that King David may have fallen from grace. It has recently been confirmed that the king observed Bathsheba, wife of Uriah, bathing on the roof of her home. David then sent for the woman and slept with her, conceiving a child. After efforts to cover up his actions and the pregnancy failed, King David had Uriah stranded and left for dead on the front lines of battle in order to take Bathsheba as his own wife.
After the death of Uriah the Hittite, Nathan has come to David to tell him of a story about a lamb. Now, I'm told we do have footage of their meeting.
There once was a man, a very rich man. He had a lot of sheep, he had a lot of land. He threw a lot of parties, he was dapper, he was tan. Yes, there once was a very rich man.
Okay, great story. I'll see you next time.
Wait just a minute, my story isn't done. It's about 2 men, and I've only mentioned one.
Oh.
There once was a man, a very poor man. He had next to nothing, just a little lamb, but he loved it like a son, and he fed it from his hand. Yes, there once was a very poor man. Then one day, there was a guest at the house of the rich man. What did he do? Have you guessed? To feed the guest of the rich man.
Well, let's see. He had plenty of sheep, so he could just share one of his sheep. Not a problem.
He took the lamb of the poor man. He took the lamb of the poor man. The rich man took to feed his guest the very, very poor man's lamb.
What? Is that a true story?
As surely as I stand before you today, my story is true.
Who is that man? Tell me. To take the lamb of the poor man, when he had lots of sheep, of the poor man only had one. Man! For his cruelty, he will spend the rest of his days locked in my dungeon. Who is he?
Oh, King George, you are that man.
What?
In 2 Samuel 12:24, Solomon is born.
Absalom, the third son of David, has been killed. It has been a rocky road between Absalom and his father for years. Previously, Absalom murdered his half-brother Amnon for raping and dishonoring his sister, Tamar. Absalom then started to see himself as the bringer of justice, declaring himself as king over his father. In a battle depicted in 2 Samuel 18, one of David's men found Absalom with his hair caught in a tree and took the opportunity to kill him. The king is deep in mourning despite the differences between him and his son.
In 1 Kings, David dies and Solomon succeeds him and became king.
King Solomon has been granted a gift from the Lord. God appeared to Solomon at Gibeon in 1 Kings 3, telling him that he would grant Solomon anything he asked for. The king asked only for a wise and discerning mind in order to lead the people well. The Lord not only granted this, but promised Solomon honor and riches as well, along with the promise to lengthen the life of the king should he honor the Lord's commandments as David did.
King Solomon has built the temple that God promised he would. It's a very nice place. Meanwhile, Solomon does build a house for himself that is quite a bit more wealthy and flauntier.
During Solomon's reign, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. These women were a distraction to his path with the Lord because of the other gods that they were worshiping.
After 40 years on the throne, King Solomon has died, leaving his son Rehoboam on the throne. Chapter 12 of Kings has revealed Rehoboam didn't inherit his father's wisdom. After the people asked for a lighter workload, the king's advisors agreed that this was a wise choice for the new ruler. Rehoboam has instead chosen to take the advice of his friends and treat his subjects even more harshly. The king's decision has caused an uproar and divided the kingdom.
Once the kingdom split, there were many different kings. You'll see here that there were kings of Israel and kings of Judah. The kings of Israel were all bad. The kings of Judah, some of them were good, some of them were bad, some of them were very bad.
Jezebel, the wife of Ahab, persecuted the prophets of the Lord, encouraged the worship of Baalah and Ashtoreth, and also associated with false prophets.
I'm being told that Elijah has just performed a miracle by bringing fire down from heaven. It was quite a spectacle where there was water, many jugs of water placed on top of a burnt offering, but fire came down from heaven and burned it up.
Hoshea will be known as the last king over Israel. While King Hoshea still did evil in the sight of the Lord, his reign wasn't as flooded with sin as many of his predecessors. Nonetheless, the sins of Hoshea and the nation were punished when Hoshea rebelled against the Assyrian king. In response to this action, the Assyrian king has attacked and destroyed Samaria, deporting the Jewish residents.
Hezekiah got an awful disease, so he called the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah told him he was going to die, so he prayed to God, so God extended his years. In his years, he became prideful of his kingdom, so he was told war was going to take place in the kingdom in the time of his son.
Manasseh, king at age 12, has not followed in the footsteps of his father. 2 Kings 21 shows a series of questionable actions on part of the young king, including rebuilding the high places destroyed by his father, building altars in the Lord's house, and burning his own son as an offering. The actions of the young king have led the people into disobedience and idolatry once again. In response, the Lord has promised to bring disaster and destruction upon Jerusalem and Judah.
King Josiah has brought many reforms to Judah, including going back to the basic in terms of the Deuteronomic law, removing the pagan altars and idols, and centralizing worship at the Temple of Jerusalem.
586 BC, the fall of Jerusalem. On the 7th day of the 5th month, a king's commander came and set fire to the kingdom, thus destroying it.
Cyrus, king of Persia, has sent exiles back to Jerusalem. The Lord, according to Ezra 1, has stirred up the king's spirit and commanded him to send the Jews to rebuild the temple. Cyrus has sent those returning to Jerusalem with gifts of silver and gold, as well as vessels that had previously been stolen from the house of the Lord.
After so long, the people have been able to return to the land of their home, 42,360 of them in all, and they came and set up an altar.
After a delay due to opposition, the building of the temple has recommenced. A few years ago, some of the non-Jewish inhabitants wrote a letter to King Artaxerxes about Jerusalem in Ezra 4, warning him that if the city were to be rebuilt, the kingdom would lose money from tributes, tolls, and customs. In response, the king decreed that construction cease until further notice. This year, with the support of the prophets, construction has recommenced. After a letter explaining the situation, King Darius commanded that work on the house of God be left to completion, in accordance with the original orders of King Cyrus.
Yes, you heard it here, folks. The temple is finished. In the 6th year of King Darius, the temple has finally been completed after it was burned.
Nehemiah, cupbearer to the king, has been distraught over the state of Jerusalem. According to chapter 1 of the book of Nehemiah, He received intel from one of his brothers that the group of exile survivors in Jerusalem is, quote, in great trouble and shame, unquote, with the walls and gates of the city destroyed. Nehemiah has wept and mourned for this group and has prayed to the Lord and asked him to be attentive to the people's plight.
We learn now that the king has sent resources to Jerusalem, including letters and wine.
After just 52 days of work, the wall has been finished. According to Nehemiah 6:16, enemies of Jerusalem are discouraged and frightened by the completion of the wall, with the knowledge that it has been accomplished with the help of the Lord. Gatekeepers and guards have been appointed from within the city, with some guards at specific posts and some in front of their homes.
And yes, the people have repented. Once again, the seed has separated from the strange.
You are the king. You have many duckies. But Thomas only had one, and he loved it very much. But you weren't thinking about Thomas. You were only thinking about yourself and what you wanted.
But
Your Highness, what you have done has made God very unhappy. For whether you are a king or just a kid, God wants us all to think of others first.